we are going to tell you all about the oven and stove.
It should last a full lifetime of your build.
Put that in the oven.
It's right here.
The volume level does change, and we've learned a lot.
We're going to be tapping into our fuel tanks.
We are really happy that we could combine our heat and our cooking into one unit.
The time has come to wire in our Wallace cooktop / heater and our oven. Nice thing is they gave us wires in the packaging. They already have a harness and a clip, so this should be pretty easy. It even includes an inline fuse. I'm going to be going back to a fuse block, so I won't even use that, but that would be really nice a lot of times if you weren't able to do that. So I'm going to clip in on this end and then pull it through and cut off what I don't need. That'll be the easiest way to do it. As you know, this is a sponsored product from Scan Marine. They've been super helpful this whole time. We've been going back and forth talking about our plan for installation, and they've been recommending the best exhaust pipes to use and all that stuff for our particular circumstance. It can really vary depending on how you're hooking these things up. It's really nice that they even included wires and inline fuse. It makes it pretty easy for installation. So let's get this hooked up. Unfortunately, my point of distribution for power was about 2 feet longer than these. So I had to add a new wire, and I had to size up just a little bit to account for the amp draw and the extra distance. You always got to watch that if you are adding a different wire to something that's pre-wired. It's almost the same size. This is the metric. Mine is not. But wire gauge is good. New wires are in, connected, good to go. And I'll save this for something else down the line. Hoping to run 2 wires at once so we don't have to do this twice. But it's starting to get a little crowded in that space.
I'm prepping the exhaust line for our oven and stove, and we have this little insulation tube that goes on here because it's pretty close to wires and it goes through parts of the cabinet, so we're trying to make sure that it's protected.
Thought maybe that was just like a Christmas sweater.
Just trying to make it look nice with a nice white knitted sweater.
I guess spinning it kind of works. I'm gonna climb under the bed and then try to feed this to you through the pass-through, okay?
Okay.
hug that rail. We are just running the exhaust pipes from the stove and from the oven. We decided we're going to take them out of the floor and run them across the back. What we're going to do, I think, what we're thinking about right now, is we're just going to have these two meet this much larger square tube here, just stainless, and we'll mount that up in a space that's safe against the subframe where it's not going to get hit with articulation. And the gas fumes will come out the back of the vehicle. And that gets it away from the side a little bit, which is like an area where we're hanging out sometimes. But we didn't want to put it out here at head level by the stairs where you're walking and right under the window. So we're just trying to move it a little bit away so you don't get as much fumes if you are hanging out outside and somebody's cooking or something. Today's project, we're going to be tapping into our fuel tank so we can run a line to the stove and the oven. In the long term, we may add a separate tank just for those two appliances. Right now, it's just easier to tap into our existing fuel tank, and we'll look at it again in the future for different options. Savannah's grandpa's here today. He's going to help me tap into the tank. He's also going to be making a custom plate to kind of fit onto the tank. The dipstick itself that goes in the tank is a Wallace part. They make all kinds of accessories for both tapping into fuel as well as exhaust. And just because the Unimog is unique and we have the ability to fabricate, we're going to make some custom parts. But if you don't have that ability, you can buy all kinds of different adapters. There's exhaust ports through the walls or through the floor and different ways to mount on the outside. First up, we're going to tap the tank. Really grateful for the help. Hopefully we'll have this thing up and running by the end of the day. Wallace provides these really nice brackets that attach to the stove top, and then you screw this up into your counter to tighten it. Unfortunately, our counter is just a little too thick, so I can't get the screw through this into the stove, so I'm going to router out a little bit of the wood, and then hopefully it should go right on there.
It's been a few weeks since we installed the Wallace diesel oven and stove. We've given it a really good test and we've learned a lot about both of the units. So right now we want to test it on camera. We're going to do a number of things to show you how it works, how loud it is, how long it takes to heat up, because it's very different than the propane stove that we had in our bus. We're also going to make a full meal. We're bringing you along for dinner tonight so that you can see how all of it works, because the best test is to just actually make a whole dinner. But before we do that, you probably noticed that our house looks a little bit different. We have done a ton of things to make it more comfortable and just more functional, more storage spots. So I'm going to take you through all of those things right now. The first one is our pop-up countertop. Adds a bunch of counter space to our kitchen. I wouldn't say that we're hurting for counter space. We have a lot next to the stove, above the fridge, but it is definitely less than we're used to having from our bus. So this helps a lot. Really easily just folds up and down. And that has been awesome. The second thing, hooks for our keys. Really small, just popped a few hooks on the wall. So easy, and it helps us stay a lot more organized. And speaking of organization, shelves. We have 4 of them. I made these shelves. If you remember our bus, you'll remember they're a pretty similar style. I used leftover copper pipe that we had from past builds, and I used cedar for the wood. I always make our shelving because I could make it to the exact size of all of our spices. Super easy to put together, really doesn't take a lot of time, and our storage is completely customized. I knew that I wanted them to be 6 of our spice jars wide and exactly how tall I wanted them. So it's really efficient if you can make your own storage. Game changer for the kitchen. We do have a pull-out pantry that holds some spices, but we were noticing that our kitchen storage was getting a little bit cramped. So to get 12 of our spice jars out of the under counter storage really freed up a lot of space for other pantry items. The other shelves, there's one above the bed up there, a little bit of additional storage, some decorations, and then the 4th one is right here. What I really built this for was to hold our soap when we're driving, because this we will always forget to put away and it will fly off the counter. So that's really what that was made for, and then you can put it down here when you're parked. And you probably noticed that there is some life in our kitchen. We actually have our plants back. This was a big part of our bus kitchen as well, having these inset planters, because your plants will fly everywhere when you drive, and that is a huge mess, dirt flying everywhere. So we have always done the inset plant holder in the countertop, because otherwise this was just a void of space. It was completely unusable. But if you cut out the countertop, we put in this nice stainless steel pan that we custom made for it. Then the plants sit right in there. You can water them and not worry about it leaking. So we have one behind the stove, and we also have one behind the sink. And I got a new little cactus for that one. He's really happy back there.
Nice.
Yeah, So, what else? The laundry chute. You heard us talk about this when we were building the closet. One thing that we wanted to integrate into this build that we've never done before is a dedicated spot for our laundry. We always just kept the laundry bag in our shower in the past. But for this build, we knew that our shower was going to be convertible, and so that wouldn't be an option. So right in the back of the closet, and you saw a lot of this in the episode where we made the closet, there's a little door, and this door opens up the base of the closet underneath here, and it just goes right down to the storage spot underneath our bed. I put hooks on the bottom of the closet where the wood ends, and then I put rings into our laundry bag so it can hang right there at the bottom of the closet, and it's open to the whole compartment. So you just open this up, throw your laundry down there, it goes right into the laundry bag. Then when you're at the laundromat, you're ready to do laundry, you just unhook it and take it out the hatch in the bottom. I don't know if anybody else would be excited about this unless you've lived in a tiny space for 8 years. But this is really exciting to us. Basically, in terms of our living space, the laundry just disappears into the closet. Now we are going to tell you all about the oven and stove. We're going to use both to cook a meal right now. We are going to make baked hummus pasta, one of our favorite dishes. This is so delicious. We have to boil pasta on the stove, and then we have to bake the hummus and tomatoes in the oven. So we will demo both of them. We've been using them for a few weeks now, and there is a lot to talk about. But first, let's make some dinner. Ooh. It's so fun to use everything. Just using the sink is so exciting. This is the controller for the stove, and this is the controller for the oven. The first thing that I'm going to turn on is the oven. So we have to have it set to 400 Fahrenheit. And that's the tricky thing if you're in the US and you're not used to Celsius. This oven display is set in Celsius. So I need 400 Fahrenheit, which is about 204 Celsius. So I'll just set it to 200. And what we like about this, there's no pilot to light. With our propane oven, we always had to light the pilot, and that would actually deter us from using the oven as often. It wasn't hard to do, but it was just an extra step. So this, as easy as it gets, you just flip the switch. This switch over here is for the light inside of the oven. So I'll turn that on. So you can hear that the oven is on, and that is preheating. As soon as it is fully preheated, this light over here will go off, and that's how you know that it's ready. I do have to boil water for pasta, so I'm also gonna use the stove. The first thing to do is flip it open. This lid is actually what makes this unit a heater. So this is our cooktop, but it's also our heater, which is what really sold us on this unit. The heater mode is a whole different setting that I'll explain later on, but just to turn this on, it's really, really simple. You just press and hold the button, and you can hear it turn on. A little bit louder than the oven. This is gonna take a few minutes to actually heat up and turn on. Just like a diesel vehicle, the glow plugs have to start up and warm up. It kind of has a preheating process going on. Everyone's first question with both of these units is about the exhaust. These are directly vented to the outside. Essentially, what both the oven and the stove are doing is heating up a chamber and then blowing it out underneath the glass or blowing it out into the oven. The exhaust is vented directly outside, and it never has a chance to even get into the cabin. Essentially, the oven functions like a convection oven. So the chamber is heated up, the exhaust is directly vented outside, and then there's a fan inside the oven that circulates the air. For the stove, It's not hot yet. It's probably been 3 or 4 minutes. You can see that it's heating because this little red light is on here. And you have all the different settings, 1 to 6. We noticed that the stovetop gets very hot, so we keep it usually between 1 and 2. Even to boil water for pasta, I will not put it up to 6. So what you're also probably noticing on the face of the stove is that there's 2 different sized circles. This is a 2-burner stove. So this is essentially your high burner and this is your low burner. So far we've been able to use all of our usual pots and pans. This is enamel cast iron. We have a cast iron pan. We also have a stainless steel smaller pot, and all of those things have worked great on the glass cooktop. So we are going to let this water boil. Put some salt in it. To boil a pot of water, I will kick it up to maybe 4 or 5. 6 is super hot. This stove gets way, way hotter than our propane stove ever did. So even to boil a pot of water on the high burner, pretty much I'm gonna keep it at 4. So I'm peeling the garlic for the pan that's gonna go in the oven, and you can hear that the stove just kicked up a notch in volume. And it does that when it's really getting up to its highest temperature, and then it will quiet down again as it continues to cook. But the volume level does change as it cycles throughout its heating process. So you can hear now that the fan on the stove has kicked back down. It does that after it gets to the full temperature, and it's just kind of maintaining now. We are gonna put that in the oven to bake. Another really cool feature of this oven is the lock. So you know that it's not gonna fly open when we're off-roading. You just have to push this down to open and close it. Also love that there's a huge, nice window on the front, so you can see whatever you're baking in there.
A couple specs on the cooktop. It only uses between 3 and 6.5 ounces per hour of diesel, so it's really just sipping. We're usually running it pretty low, so it's probably close to about 3 ounces per hour. And with the box being insulated so well, it doesn't need to run that much as a heater. When you use this as a heater, it's between 2,000 BTU and 6,650 BTU. This thing puts out a lot of heat. For a small space, it is more than enough. We've never really needed to go more than maybe number 2 when we're using it as a heater. As far as the power consumption, this is a 12-volt unit. It pulls 9 amps for about 5 minutes during the startup phase, and once that kicks down, it's pulling less than an amp while it's running. I think it's about 0.75, which is really low, which is great. It's just running that fan to push the hot air around, so we're really happy with its power consumption and its fuel consumption. It's very efficient overall, and it also saves us a whole bunch of space not needing another heater or system to run that heater, so we're really happy with that. The oven is also really efficient with fuel consumption. The oven is also a 12-volt unit. It pulls 9 amps for about 7 minutes during startup, and then drops down to a measly 0.15, which is basically nothing, and that's amazing. The other thing we were concerned about, we know everybody's going to ask about, is the smell of the diesel exhaust. So first thing we did is we made sure to vent it as far away from our window as we could. So it actually comes out the back of the vehicle. It's funny, it kind of looks like a vehicle exhaust, but it's for these 2 units. That gets it away from this window right here that we like to vent fresh air in. It's far enough away you don't smell it at all. And it also is a very minimal amount of the exhaust that has a much more mild odor than like starting up the truck, for example, which is a big engine. It does have a smell, though less offensive than a truck, and we can't smell it inside the box at all, being that it is all the way out the back. We haven't run it with the back window open. We maybe would smell it then because that's where the vent is, but as far as when we're in here cooking, We don't smell it at all, so it's really nice.
All right, we've talked about it long enough. The water is boiling. It really didn't take long at all. Just as long as any of the other stoves that we've had, maybe 10, 15 minutes at the most. But it does have that startup time, which is really the only difference. Now that we're done cooking, all we have to do is press the button again to turn it off. So the little red light here is blinking. It's in its cool down phase. And you can also see on the cooktop, there's a red light that's illuminated in the middle. That lets you know that the cooktop is still hot, so you don't burn yourself on it. We can also shut the lid now and just let it cool down. You can hear now that the stove has completely shut down. It completed its cool down process, maybe 2 minutes, possibly less. It really doesn't take that long, but all the lights are off, so you can see that that is finished. I want to show you the heater mode. Essentially, the lid is what makes it a heater. It just blows the heat out the front. But if you want to activate the thermostat to make it a heater, you have to do a special little trick. So you turn it on, just like we did before. You can hear it start up. And then you need to turn the dial left, right, left, right. Now you can see that the heater is illuminated and it's entered heating mode. Now you can set whatever level you want the heater to be at. We usually keep it at 1, maybe 2, usually just 1 because this is a pretty small space. And it will blow heat out the front. That's really all you have to do to make it a heater. Put it into that mode, close the lid. So we are really happy that we could combine 2 major systems, our heat and our cooking, into one unit. It's pretty much what sold us on using the Wallace stovetop, is because it could be both. Then you just do the same thing to turn it off. And you're done. Ooh. And all you have to do to turn the oven off, just flip that switch.
We need more pasta. You throw back in and toast it up a little bit. Ooh. Ooh-wee.
There you go.
Let's see. I'm gonna give it a taste here. That's pretty good. I'm hungry. It's been a long day. Pretty good.
That's really good.
I'm enjoying this right now.
Overall, I think you saw that we really love both the Wallace oven and stove. They are an adjustment from our propane units that we had before, but I don't know that the adjustments were necessarily a downside. We're just cooking with an entirely different type of fuel, propane versus diesel, and they are very different. But I think the biggest pro, our stove is our heater. Huge. Second to that for me is that we are using a fuel source we already have on board. That is huge. We don't have to fill propane. If we don't have diesel, our truck doesn't run and we have a bigger problem. So we should always have fuel to cook. And as Drew was saying before, These things absolutely sip diesel. We should have no trouble at all with our 50-gallon tank.
Another nice thing with the stove cooktop being separate from the oven as opposed to the combo unit, which we originally thought we wanted because we thought it'd be a little bit better with space. If there's an issue with either, the other still works. So if you have to repair one or send it for repair or something like that, you're not losing both. So if we look at the cons, there are a few. Not really big, but they are something we want to mention. Probably the first thing is it has a startup time, so that's new. If you've ever used propane or any kind of gas stove in a house, you turn it on, it's on. That's kind of one of the nice things with gas versus electric, because electric also takes time to heat up. So this does have a couple minutes startup in the beginning. That's an adjustment.
The other thing that could be considered a downside is the noise level, especially on the stove. The stove is the loudest one. The oven has a little bit of noise.
If you're doing anything else, you're not hearing it at all.
If we have the TV on, you're not even hearing it. And we've adjusted to the noise level.
I guess the other big con to consider, and this is really unique to everyone's situation and budget and what is your build, it's pretty pricey up front. You got to remember these are made for boats. We know anything marine is more expensive, but they are really high quality units that should last a full lifetime of your build. The stove was around $2,700 and I think the oven was just about $3,000. One of the things that also made it work for us is that since the stove cooktop could be our heater as well, we got a lot of that money back because we didn't have to build a full propane system. We didn't need to come up with a place for it. We didn't need to buy a really expensive tank and then run all the lines. So that actually covered a good chunk of it. And that's sort of where it worked in my mind when we were looking at everything. It saved space, but we didn't need to do that extra fuel system, which is pretty pricey as well.
We really want to thank Scan Marine for being one of our build sponsors. They worked with us to supply both of these units here in the US. As far as we know, they're the only US supplier for Wallace products. So we will leave the link to both the oven and the stove down in the description. Scan Marine has been so incredibly helpful. So if you decide to buy either the oven or the stove or any other marine products from them, their customer service is fantastic. They answered several questions for us throughout the installation process, so we're really proud to have them on board as one of our sponsors.
That's it for this episode, and we'll see you next time. Get the best shots of me just like struggling with stuff. Like, all right, drum shooting. I'm just like, I can't do it. Where's my thing? Where's all my tools that I need?